This trip report is titled Datura the Temptress by user named Abdul Rahmen. For 4 months I searched obsessively for Datura Stramonium. I had looked at hundreds of pictures and read many articles on the elusive plant, but it wasn't until one day when I was coming home from work that it finally caught my eye. Something had been drawing my attention to a motel's jacuzzi each day as I passed by, but I had no idea what it was. One day, I figured that I usually don't notice something so intensely, so I decided to take a closer look, and boy, I was a happy camper. There she was, a huge juniper bush mounted like a shrine in front of a mound with at least 15 Datura plants. At the top stood the mother, like a beautiful woman. It really freaked me out. The plant had such a powerful presence. I had to go back. So I planned to go that night on my bicycle and hop the fence to grab a portion of the treasure. This was probably a bad thing to do, crossing a fence to steal Datura plants, but she found me and presented me with this temptation. Months passed and the seeds just sat in my desk until one day when I met this kid traveling through town. We spent the night talking and I just couldn't resist bringing up the subject of Datura. He said that he had heard of it and he had wanted to take it for some time. His eagerness to test the plant made him seem a bit naive, but he insisted that he was ready. "Come on dude, let's do it. It'll turn out good and we'll learn a lot." We went to the kitchen and ground about 3/4 of a tablespoon of the seeds in the family coffee grinder for each of us, then packed it into our knapsacks for a camping trip which was planned for that night. We arrived at dusk and settled down, lit a fire, prayed, and downed the poultice seeds without telling our friends. Stephen, the traveling kid, and I took a walk down the dirt road that ran through the center of the field. We were extremely attentive to how the seeds were affecting us. I listened closely. What would happen next? Her presence began to be felt about 100 yards down the road. We sat in the middle of the road and felt the world slipping from our control. We gazed at the distant fire. The world became so eerie. The voices and lives of our friends seemed another world away. I asked Stephen how it was coming. He said, "I'm taking a crap." I guess I followed him. We were in this together and I didn't want to leave him, and sat with him for a few minutes and didn't even realize it. I was becoming a little delirious. We walked back to the campsite and sat down on a log. Our mouths became so dry. We chugged at least 2 quarts of water each. No resolve though. We both lay down in concern. "Are you alright?" he whispered to me. We were both moaning and very scared, lonely and regretful. My brother left and went home. I wanted to leave with him so badly, but this was my choice and I said not a word and examined my life. I didn't want to die. I stumbled off into a ditch near the pasture so I could lie down. The world I once knew was disappearing. The stars multiplied. I felt like I was dying. I had to piss, so I tried to get up, and my legs felt like jelly. I stumbled on some rocks and fell back down and began crying. I then pulled myself back to campsite, which was only about 20 yards away, where the car was parked. I tried to crawl, but it was too difficult also. I flopped this body against the car and tried to pee, but I couldn't. I was in pain. I got back to my ditch and lay there and tried to pee laying down. I gave up. An old Bob Dylan tune was echoed into the night sky from my car stereo. The song was very comforting, One Too Many Mornings. I was startled when I noticed car lights reflecting on the trees around the pasture. I moved myself quickly to the car to turn off the music and uttered in fear that a car was coming. The guys were expecting some folks, so I lay down next to the fire. At this point, the delirium really set in, and my friends knew something was going on. It was so creepy remembering this. I was told that for the next couple of hours, they watched me try to grasp the physical world from the delusional. I was like a little kid, a caveman or something. I was trying to talk, but it all came out so jumbled in some other language. The guys became a little concerned. They told me that I kept walking off this wooden deck-like thing into a soggy creek bed. They found me there mangled and pulled me out with some concern. I kept wandering back to the creek bed, stumbling off the deck into it. Around 4 a.m. they pulled me out and stood me up. I kept peeing on myself, but it was so relieving. I suppose everyone went to bed or something because I wandered off the dirt road, the one that goes through the pasture. I felt energized and had control of my body now, but I was still delirious. I'd found Stephen. He sat me down and began to inform me of something very unnerving. The night had a very evil feeling as it was. He said, "Man, I don't know what to do. I don't want this." He showed me his dark, long fingernails. His face was very old and hairy, werewolf-like. I flipped out. I told him it was going to be okay, not to worry, it was just a bad dream. I knew this wasn't though when I saw him. He was being possessed by her. I ran for my life. I had begun to witness the spirit world, the darkest reality. Ghost-like beings were everywhere. It sickened me. I ran and ran, hopped a barbed wire fence into a weedly field, and ran around the perimeter trying to avoid stepping on snakes. I was almost flying. I fell really hard at one point. When I got up, I saw a glow in the middle of the field. I was controlled at this point. I was pulled to the center of the field, where I witnessed some demonic action. There were 7 guys and girls dressed in dark clothes, black hair and pale skin. They were all enticed, basically making love with the plant. They danced around glowing Datura plant. She was alive. There was one guy/girl to my left that was very tall and thin. He/she seemed to be the plant spirit, the leader. They all quit dancing. Datura, she stared into my eyes and shook her head. I messed up and I knew it. I ran so quick towards the woods. He/she sent one of the others, the enticed ones, after me. I tried to hop this barbed wire fence, but I got caught and I cut myself. I turned around to the enticed one. He stopped still in the darkness. I then felt as if he wanted to run with me and get away from this evil life. I said, "Come on dude, let's go. She'll kill you, come on." He stopped, and it was as if something forced him to shake his head saying no. I then hopped the wire fence and ran up the hill, tore through some vines, briar, just tearing through. I leaped down the other side. Something stopped me and pulled my head up towards the ridge. There was the Temptress, and she was after my life. She was capable of transformation and teleportation. I was so scared. I tore through the woods. I had to avoid 2 black jaguars. It was her. She is so tricky and evil. I came to the highway and it was about dawn at this point. I kept running from her. She was so tricky. She had this power to dissipate, bow into the side of the road and just vanish, leaving only slightly noticeable energy particles. She could move about so quickly like this. I spent the next hour running in terror. I had to prove my strength and that I wasn't going to give in. She would offer me things like power, drugs, girls, etc. She sat on the top of a road sign with her legs crossed behind. "What does this say?" She tested my strength to the end. So wicked. I remember running. Cars were swerving in order to avoid me. I guess I was in the road. I didn't dare go into the woods again. They had too much power in the darker areas. I could hear their evil laughter in the distance. She would bow into the ground every time a car would come around the corner. I was so scared and tired. I didn't know where I was, but I had to get out of there quickly. I tried signaling to the traffic that they were trying to get me. A lady pulled over and told me to get in. She knew something was wrong. I was so confused. She said she took me to a sheriff's station in another town. It turned out she was a psychologist. She spotted the terror. Most folks don't pick up crazed people. I was extremely blessed. I went into the station with her and she told the sheriff that I was confused and seemed very disturbed. I told the cop that I was being followed by evil kids that wanted to sacrifice me. He asked me if I'd done any drugs. I said no because it was real. I had forgotten about the Datura and only remembered the cannabis leaf I'd smoked the day before. Besides, he wouldn't have believed me if I told him that I did, but he knew. They called my mother and brother. They came and got me. The plant left me with strange powers that I was soon to lose as I came down. By the way, I was informed that the cops actually went out to check out the area. They looked into cult members in the physical world. It was very kind of them. The plant is a very useful teacher, but also deadly. I don't know if it's worth the risk. I was so dehydrated that my tonsils were bleeding. A cop came in and poured me a styrofoam cup full of water. It was the best. I savored every drop. I dropped the cup of water on the floor, but when I looked down, it was gone. There are many delusional things that happened also. It may be hard to distinguish the true lessons from the effects of the poisoning. I got home, drank some water, took a long rest. It left me feeling very lonely for months. My eyes were unable to focus for the following week. I went to my friend's house the next day. I had to find out what happened. Before describing anything on my part, he told me that he witnessed at the campsite, he was sober by the way, the other induced one, become real odd looking. He was hairy like a dog, and it was clear what he saw. He described exactly what happened to him and what I witnessed. The following week, I went to the library to research more about Datura. A book read that it was common to have dreams involving lycanthropy, which is the turning of a man to wolf. How bizarre. This freaked me out. Please don't take this with a grain of salt or as an entertaining story. It was such a nightmare. I felt so lonely for so long, still recovering a year later. I must inform people about the deadliness of Datura. She will trick you into death, and if you die, you may have more problems than just a dead body. She will have weakened you to the point of surrendering your soul to her. Watch out, and please take much precaution, brothers and sisters. If you have any disturbing true stories of your own that you would like to be featured and read aloud on this channel, then please submit them in to the email address in the description. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more disturbing content.